Gevurah. Gevurah means strength. Gevurah is quite a complex emotion, and strength doesn't really tell you what it is. Often we associate strength with muscle or mental strength. So when we talk about strength, what we're talking about is the strength to withhold oneself, because that is the ultimate strength. And if you weigh 60, 80 kilos, your strength is going to be to either push that 60 kilos into something or withhold that 60 kilos from something. The ultimate strength is to be able to hold oneself. To hold more than oneself is superhuman. For every human, it's super for that human. To be able to push or withhold less than self is not a big feat. The big feat is to be human. It's to be able to hold or push oneself. And that is strength. That's Gevurah. So I want to talk about Gevurah as an emotional reaction. An emotional reaction of Gevurah is where something happens, again, outside or within oneself, and there is this tough and hard reaction. Now, the tough and hard reaction of Gevurah is what actually makes a person naturally disciplined. It's what drives the ability to retain something. And I don't mean retain intellectually. I'm just talking about holding on to things, whether that be physically to hold on to something or to possess something. There's judgment, again, to distance oneself, to hold oneself back from being involved. So you'll find that chesed, which I explored in the previous video, and Gevurah very much sit opposite one another. In fact, so often when we talk about Gevurah, it's counter to chesed, as opposed to chesed being counter to Gevurah. And that's because Gevurah is this withheld sort of aspect of self. It's almost the withholding of chesed, holding oneself back from extending into a situation. And so if you think about structure and focus and these sorts of personality traits, it's the not being distracted. And I don't mean distracted of the mind as much as distracted of the heart, the emotion to want to do that and to be involved in that and to love this and to like that, as opposed to switch it all off: structure, rules. Now, there are pros to this Gevurah reaction, such as a natural ability to set boundaries, a natural ability to say no, a natural ability to create space, a natural ability to be measured. And I don't just mean measured in the mind or measured in outcome, but just measured in general. It's a form of restraint. Now, again, is that a good thing or is it not a good thing? Depends on how much and in what situation. So Gevurah is not a bad or a good emotion, just as chesed is not bad or good. It depends how we're employing it and what it drives us to do in a subconscious way. So when I say subconscious, I mean like, what do you just instinctively do when you see a particular thing or where you're dealing with something inside? So as chesed is, you naturally are curious, you naturally get involved, you naturally feel something. Gevurah will be, you naturally recoil, you naturally pull back, you naturally suspend, you naturally create space and distance between yourself and something else, whether that something else, again, is outside of you or inside of you. So some of the negative aspects of Gevurah could, and challenges of too much Gevurah within our personality in a natural way would be being closed off, completely closed off, or distant. And that could be emotionally distant. It could be what drives us to be physically distant from something. I mean, ultimately, that behavior of being physically distant from something is coming from somewhere. Emotionally absent. So when people talk about being emotionally absent, more often than not, they don't actually mean full spectrum of absence of emotions, or an absence of a full spectrum of emotions. What they usually mean is an absence of kindness, I want you to give me a hug. I want you to kiss me. I want you to tell me how much you love me. And you don't, so you're emotionally absent. But meanwhile, the person may have many, many other emotions that are in play. So I don't mean emotionally absent in general as much as the colloquial term emotionally absent, which is usually an absence of chesed. But other aspects of too much gevurah will be anger and rage and frustration. And so all of these personality expressions of gevurah are not to be solved in gevurah. As we're going to explore with the next one, particularly with Tiferes, it's going to be how we regulate gevurah and how we utilize gevurah with other emotions to get a much better balance. So this first part is about being aware of Gevurah, being aware of an abundance of Gevurah. Now, I want to take you just quickly on a different track, which is understanding what an absence of Gevurah looks like. Because in the first part, we're exploring what happens when we have a lot of Gevurah, too much Gevurah, unbridled Gevurah. And again, if you, like I said in the Chesed, if you have these tendencies towards boundaries and rules and creating space and discipline, that's a really important thing to be aware of in context of job seeking, in context of where you live your life, how you live a life, what society. I mean, it's many people who have an intense Gevurah. I just want to talk about something. This is real sideways. It's just popped into my head. In Kabbalah, we have this idea that nations of the world embody particular sefirot. And so there's this whole conversation about Northern Europeans having a very, very natural tendency towards Gevurah. And the definition of Northern Europeans is a little hard, and especially after world wars where people move around, and so you might have people of Germanic or Anglo background who are living elsewhere in the world, but they still have their personality traits of their nation. And so we find behaviors as you get closer to the Arctic Circle. Now, I don't want to generalize, but I just want, when you stereotype a Russian or Ukrainian or a German, what's their personality type compared to when you will stereotype a Mexican, Central American, South American, right? So I don't get too scientific or anything like that. I just want to point out that when a person has a Gevurah tendency, just as they have with Chesed, they will find a certain comfort not only in a career or a job, but also in a society, etc. Anyway, so I'm sorry if that distracted you, but let's just come back to challenges of when we have too little Gevurah, and to identify, do I have an absence of Gevurah? For example, a struggle when it comes to making plans, or adhering to rules, or even creating rules, to form a routine. Struggles in setting boundaries and being able to say no. Struggles to be able to say, this is too much. Struggles in restraining, impulsivity control, restraining self. So if these are areas that a person struggles in, they've got a deficiency in Gevurah. It's not uncommon, but it's not a rule, that somebody that is overly abundant with Chesed is going to be somewhat weak in the Gevurah department, and someone who's very strong in Gevurah could be weak in the Chesed department. Not uncommon. And I suppose there's a bit of logic there, and you'll see more of that logic in the next video when we talk about Tiferet. So, just recapping on thinking about, is there too much Gevurah in your personality? And too much means it's a problem. It's becoming a problem. Where are you noticing problems? Where are you getting feedback about problems? Or the opposite, which is where there's deficiency in Gevurah.